very warm welcome to Great Principles. I'm Seema Choria. Our guest today comes from a family that has been into education for generations. He has a voracious reader and a master's in English literature. His love for being around children get him into education. He believes that being surrounded by children keeps him mentally young. He has spent a good part of his career working within the IBCIE framework, both curricula based on modern skill-based inquiry pedagogy. He has set up a CRE Taman Rama School in Bali, Indonesia. He has set up Spakra International School in Warangal, Andhra Pradesh. He was a part of inception of Pathways World School, Noida. The last school he set up was Sri Hari Global School for SREI Foundation in Arsenal, West Bengal. He has worked closely with Exceed Foundation from its first days. Today's his dream is to set up Shanti Niketan Shishu Tirth as one of the best schools in the country. In his own words, and I quote, "Marks are important, but if you can remove the fear of exam from children, they score better." It is indeed a special privilege and pleasure to welcome Mr. Sudripta Tagore, Principal, Shantiniketan Shishu Tirth School, Shantiniketan, West Bengal.
Welcome to the show, sir. It's an honor to have you here.
Same here. It is an honor to be on this platform.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, here, my first question to you is, we would like to know about yourself and what landed you in the career of education.
At the beginning, my whole family is into school education. Because all my family, my mother, my father, they were into school education. They kept talking school education at home. So I had a bombardment of school talk about school education while I was growing up. So I never thought that I would get into school education myself, but because there was an overdose. Now, when I completed my post-graduation from Jadavpur University, I thought that let me rest at home first. At that time, the principal of the 11 and 12 section of Vishwabharati called me up and said that if I would be interested in a part-time position in that section. As I was doing nothing, I thought, let me sort of try my hand there. Eventually, I got a position in a Vishwabharati school called Shiksha Shatra, and I joined. But in 1995, I decided to leave all that, went to Delhi and joined journalism. Didn't like it. Then I shifted to advertising. Didn't like it either. So then I actually realized that my heart was in the classroom with children. So I came back to school education, and after that, there was no looking back. I always, my whole career has been spent in school education.
Yes, sir. So it's great to know that you landed into education even after trying many hands into various other jobs. And the thing which actually satisfies you, gives you the satisfaction, you continued that.
You see, I don't have all that illusion about school education that I'm creating the generation next or I'm sort of doing a great service to children. I am into school education from a very selfish reason. I figured out that if I am always with children, I can hold back my mental aging. And, you know, everybody looks for the elixir of life, right? I have found it in school education. And that's exactly why I always remained in school education, because I'm very selfish and I want to hold back my mental aging through whatever I do.
A beautiful thought, sir. Being around children keeps you young, and I hope all my viewers take this, that if you want to be mentally young, then be surrounded with children always.
Absolutely.
Great, sir. Moving ahead, sir. You're an avid reader, sir. So would you like to tell us the book which made you fall in love with reading? Which was your first book that made you fall in love with reading?
Yes. So I don't remember the first book that inspired me, but of course I've got one or two books in mind. A book to which I always go back, and one such book would always be Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach. The idea inspires me, and I keep going back to that book.
So would you like to share that valuable moral lesson from that book to our viewers?
You see, simple thing is fly high, dream big. And to achieve that dream, one needs to let go of basic comforts of life. That has been one of the ideas that inspires me.
So to my viewers, try reading this book. A wonderful message it has, that to achieve anything, you need to work harder and believe that everything is possible only if you have the will to do it.
Yes.
Going ahead, sir. Sir, what is the philosophy of your school and what makes it unique?
It's a borrowed philosophy. Let me be very frank about it. You see, for any school, there's a syllabus that is taught. In our case, we teach the CBSE syllabus. But when it comes to curriculum, which is the bigger picture of any school, we are inspired by Rabindranath Tagore's ideas. And though that should not have been unique, because it was propounded over 100 years back, but unfortunately, in today's world, Rabindranath is not practiced too much. So we in this school, Shantiniketan Shishu Tirtha, we believe in his philosophy and we try to practice that in spirit.
Great, sir. So, sir, how can your school boost strength of a child and make him future ready, sir?
Could you please repeat that question?
So you said that you believe in Tagore's philosophy and that is what you follow in your school. So how can that boost the strength of a child and make him future ready?
Look at what are the main focus of his philosophy. One is proximity to nature. Second is humanism. And the third one, which he calls the world of the surplus. Now let's take each one separately. We practice in the school, we have what is known as nature walks. We try to sensitize students to the nature around them. And if you look around, we have kept nature as a part of our construct of the school. Now, of course, it's a value. Somebody who is sensitive towards nature would not like to harm nature unnecessarily. So it is a value. And we know how essential that value is in today's world. Look at the bigger picture. A child who gets into our school in, say, grade 1, will join the workforce around about 25 years from now. I cannot really see what that world will be like. I'm nobody to predict that. But this much I can say, that the highest paying jobs will be pertaining to nature. Let me give you an example. Even in the automobile sector, the thrust will be how to make cars nature friendly. So in any sector, that will be the main focus. So as we know, sensitivity towards nature cannot be taught on the blackboard with a chalk. It has to be an environment through which children automatically get sensitized to nature. So the construction of our school or the construct is essential. By keeping a school which is surrounded by nature, we believe that our children will be naturally sensitive towards nature, and thus in their profession too, they will get an edge over other children.
Wow. So your school believes in making children more sensitive to nature and in fact, making them a better human.
Yes,
Who is
that's the
sensitive
second
toward
part, humanism.
humanity. Right.
I'm sure you understand that all three of these ideas are more relevant in today's world than it was ever before. The second one, humanism, is a practice. It is not a theory. So here we have, on Gandhiji's birthday, we celebrate that with a lot of dignity. Our children serve our helping hands. They wash their utensils. These are things that will make them probably better human beings. And we know how this world is fractured today, especially from different biases like gender bias, like religious bias. So we practice to allow the children to grow up in a space where these biases are not there. They are consciously removed so that these children grow up in a healthy situation, in a healthy environment, and thus become positive, responsible citizens of this country and the world.
So that is what even the pandemic struck silently. And it, suddenly urged this necessity of humanitarianism in each one of us, in our children, that we should look forward and help each other and fight all types of such pandemics or any sort of other epidemic also which might ruin the world. So today humanity is, yeah.
Yes, please.
So today humanity is the biggest value which needs to be taught to children, sir.
Exactly. And it doesn't fall from the sky.
Yeah.
The program needs to be such that these are woven into the curriculum of a school. So we can't just wish that, well, these children are together, they'll naturally learn these. It doesn't happen like that. It needs to be practiced to sensitize them, which is a part of what is known as the curriculum of a school. So that has to be taught very carefully, the curriculum.
So now proceeding to the third value.
And the third value is what he calls, that is the most difficult. He calls it the world of the surplus. It is probably the other world excluding the world of utility. Now, there's a world in which we all participate, which is very utilitarian. We'll have to earn our living. We have to sort of work for money and all that. But if we are looking at a sunset, this is something which can be enjoyed by every human being and nobody is left out of it. So that is the world. Rabindranath says that children need to live in that world, which is above the world of basic utility. Now, how does that happen? You create an environment which is aesthetically pleasing, so that children, when they come here and they spend 8 or 9 hours of their day here, they are aesthetically sensitized. You create programs where they are close to nature, so they are naturally inclined. And all these are things which is above the world of utility. If something is beautiful, to somebody, it can be shared by everybody. But to be able to live in that world is essential, and in today's context too, because we are too much bogged down into the utility world. So to train children to live in the world of the surplus through a school curriculum is also something which is essential in today's world.
A very strong message shared by Sir, that to make children better, let's practice the philosophy of Rabindranath Tagore. So
Yes.
going
Yes.
ahead, Sir.
That's essential. There's no escape from that.
So now we moving to the next section, Sir. We were just talking about pandemic, Sir. So what is your view on virtual learning, how it has affected academic progress?
Virtual learning is a stopgap solution. Now we are doing online classes because we just want to keep the children in touch with education. But if you look at it, if online classes were a solution to school education, then the whole syllabus is there, uploaded into the net. All the answers are there, uploaded into the net. There are all these videos and everything. So then we don't need schools at all. If the online classes were the solution, the school actually gives children much more than the academics. And that's where the importance of a school lies. Community feeling, life skills, and the whole world of human value cannot be practiced or taught online. So schools are essential, and they are missing out on that. They have already missed out on a year. I presume they are going to miss out on another. And it is a criminal offense. And I'm using my words very carefully. Because as we know that what is known as the synapse, the basic neuron bonding happens within the age of 16. So these 16 years in a human being's life are essential. So taking away 2 of that 16 actually is criminal, because 16 years is not a very long time. Right. And whatever happens to the human being happens within these 16 years. So it's horrible to see a generation will come up where 2 years of their 16 have been taken away from them. And it is absolutely not acceptable.
Even so, children are missing out on the academic progress also, though teaching is happening online, still the conceptual clarity that used to happen in the classroom is missing out somewhere.
Everything they miss out. You see, in our school, we practice what is known as the Exceed curriculum. Exceed is a Singapore-based provider of curriculum. We practice that. And it is, we call the model the Socratian model. That means children get to a certain aim or a certain concept through questioning. They answer questions and they arrive at any concept. Now, when they are writing, the teachers are not able to see the feedback. Writing is a skill that needs to be developed in every child. Now, when they're writing in a notebook, the teachers can't see what they're writing. So immediately writing as a skill cannot be honed on an online platform. Even speaking skills, if there are 30 students in a section, and I'm talking about the rosy picture, 30, there are 50, 60 students in a section. Can a teacher in an online platform give these children the chance to hone their communication skills? No. That could have been possible in a physical class. So for me, the online platform is just a stopgap arrangement, and I plead with the government to try and open schools, because we are actually sort of finishing off generation after generation, and this country will be in very bad shape. Not that it cannot be done. Look at Singapore.
Yeah.
Through all this pandemic, they never closed schools. The school teachers were considered by them as front-line workers. So they vaccinated all their school teachers, and school was considered an essential service. So it is not that it is not true that it is not possible. A country, a neighboring country has done, but we haven't. And that's very unfortunate.
So we'll try to send this message to all the responsible authorities and hope to see a change in this, and maybe we can impact the change of opening the schools.
We should try. I keep writing about this, but please. Please go ahead.
Whether you and I agree or not, but COVID has, so whether you and I agree or not, but COVID did open the doors, revolutionize education, and there is some bigger change that we are seeing. So what, according to you, would be the future of education, you know, getting sudden technological bombardment into this section?
The edge is sure there. I'm not saying everything is sort of a disaster. Like the sort of technology use that our children are doing as of today, 10 years back, that would have been possible in the, say, 11 and 12 section or the college. That's when they would have been able to use that. The same skills they are gaining in as early as class 3 or 4. So of course that is a plus point, because as we know that in any profession, the use of technology has become absolutely inevitable. It has to be done. So the earlier they pick up these skills, the better. So they have got that advantage through this pandemic. We were forced to. And let me tell you another secret. Children use technology much better than we adults.
Agreed. They are born with technology. They are born with it.
Yeah. So, you know, my teachers struggle, I struggle, and we learn from the children. They tell us, okay, you know, why don't you do this? It will solve this technological problem. I say, wow, man. Like, so it's just that this whole pandemic opened up their learning avenues. That is something which is great, because we are all like, our lives are finished. They are starting their life. So the better equipped they are, the better it is for them. And of course, this was a good opportunity for them to hone their technological skills. And they have done it. They have done it better than us.
They feel very proud that I taught my teacher how to resolve this technical issue.
Yeah. Interesting. They also give suggestions how to do better. And I'll give you an example. We have this, what is called the aim of a certain classroom, and there are these keywords, which we display on a slide, and then they first have to write that on their notebooks. So one day I was taking a class, and this child says that, why are we wasting our time? I said, what do you mean by that? He says that, you know, we are wasting 5 minutes of a class time of 40 to write this down. So why don't you just send them down on my WhatsApp number the previous evening? and we'll keep it there. We'll keep it with us so that we don't waste the 5 minutes. I was like, wow. So this is the sort of, technical edge these kids have now. I never thought of it. It was a very simple solution.
Right.
But that this kid thought about how he will get the maximum of the 40 minutes that he is with me, and he provided a solution rather than complaining about it. It was a wow moment for me that yes, these kids are on the right track.
Truly, sir. So, this was one of the wow moments for you. And so as a teacher, what are you most proud of accomplishing in your career?
What am I? Could you repeat that, please?
What are you most proud of accomplishing as a teacher in your career?
I haven't accomplished anything, nothing. But I look at my ex-students and I feel proud for what they have been able to achieve. Let me give you an example. There was this kid, I won't take her name because I don't know whether she would allow me to, but I was in a Krishnamurti Foundation school in Pune in those days. And she had got this little digital camera. In those days, they were just coming out. And she would go around clicking photographs all around the campus. And she was so fond of this particular toy that she had that she couldn't resist flipping it out even in a classroom situation. And everybody was irritated about this kid. Everybody said that, oh my God, this kid, she disturbs classes and all that. So in my class, I called this kid and I said, hey, you have to sit in a position where you don't disturb others. But you're most welcome to flip out your camera in my class at least. I can't talk about the other classes. In this class, you're allowed. And she would be fascinated by the early morning light coming through the window. And she had this urge to capture it. How could I deny her that pleasure? So she would be very happy in my class. Not that she didn't, perform in her academy. She was quite good. And because I allowed her this liberty, in exchange, she saw to it that she was doing quite well in my class at least. This kid grew up to become a paid photographer of National Geographic.
Wow.
And
that's phenomenal, sir.
Yes, so 20 years down the line, when Facebook, came in, and this kid got in touch with me, and I asked, so what are you doing now? And this was her reply. So I wasn't actually, I can't, this glory doesn't rub onto me. But when my kids do well, I feel that is my achievement.
Wonderful, sir. So, sir, there must be more stressful scenarios in your life, and how would you handle that?
In my life or in my school profession?
In your school profession, or or even in your life, sir, because you were the one who didn't want him to come into education, but then you came in. So there is a lot we should know about you, sir.
Yes, stress is always there. Like I was sitting pretty on a central government job, right? I was in a school in Vishwabharati. Vishwabharati is a central government university. And when I decided to leave it, my parents are very, very adjusting. They believe in a personal freedom. They didn't say anything to me, but my friends thought I was mad. People vie for a central government job, and here I was just chucking everything and leaving. It did play on my mind that I hope I'm making the right choice. But even then, I went through with it. And today I can say I don't regret even one day of my life for that decision. It has been very rocky, but even then.
So on this note, I reach to the rapid fire round of our section, which is a
Okay.
very interesting and my favorite. So you have to answer in one word. All right.
I'll
Here
try.
goes the first. Yeah, here goes the first question. Describe your leadership style in one word.
Letting go.
Letting go. All right. Name a school principal you admire the most.
Famous school director. In my mind, I have Dr. Shalini Advani, who's the director of Pathways Noida. I really look up to her.
Great. What is the right form of education? One model for all or individualized learning?
There's no doubt, individualized learning.
Going ahead. At what age should children be introduced foreign language?
As early as possible.
What do children need more today? A teacher or a
Repeat.
mentor? Sorry.
They never needed a teacher. They always needed a mentor. As a matter of fact, they also don't need a mentor. They need a friend.
Friend. Which is the most important language our children must excel in?
The mother tongue.
The mother tongue. Great, sir. It really went very well. Even in one word, you have given us a lot of insights.
No, my pleasure.
So
My
going ahead,
pleasure. Thanks for
what are-
inviting me here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, sir. Actually, we are privileged because there is so much to understand from you, how we can change the actual future of education. You know, I hope this endeavor might bring out some impactful changes.
Absolutely. We have to. We don't have much options.
Right.
Otherwise, we are going to fail our children.
Yeah.
And that's not okay.
So, sir, on this note, we come to one more section, which is called hidden talent. So, what are the sports or hobbies you're involved with outside of your work, and why do you enjoy them?
I was an avid mountaineer. I used to go to expeditions. And my second love, which I found out at a later date, was scuba diving.
Wow.
So both you're challenging your physical self, and that's important for me.
Absolutely, sir. These both are the hobbies which will keep you fit and even connected to nature.
Yes, extreme sports. That's
sports.
where my mind is.
So this brings to me to the question of the day, sir. You have a love for English, sir. So I want to know from you, what is the importance of English language and how can we improve our children's English skill?
You see, as a utility language, that is obviously the most spoken language in the whole world. So in this age of global communication, it's a tool that will help everybody, not only children, everybody. How do we improve children's language? One is by improving their skills in their mother tongue. This is not me speaking. This is Noam Chomsky, who says that one has to be very proficient in their root language to be able to master another language. So this is not something which is commonly understood or practiced, if I may say so. So we have to make them proficient in their mother tongue for them to be able to do well in English too.
So this is, something which even I'm hearing for the first time. Generally, we are given start phonetics, make them read, make them watch English channel. First time I'm hearing that they need to be proficient in their mother tongue. So.
And this is not me, it's Noam Chomsky who says that.
And
I am actually a collector of items. So nothing that you hear or see around you is me. I just keep collecting things and I believe in them and I practice them.
so, but even for that, you require the skill to collect the right things.
Well, for me, they are right. For others, they might not be. Like people running English medium schools would come and, lock me up if they heard this. Right?
So, sir, yeah, of course, I think they might do so. Sir, so have you witnessed any change, any child who is very proficient in mother tongue and that child is speaking English fluently?
Me.
So we have a
If-
living example.
Yeah, and if what you hear is okay, I've done an okay job, then I'm a living example. I always studied in the local language schools. My entire schooling was done in Vishwabharati, which is a Bengali medium school.
So Bengali medium passed out student today teaching English.
Yes, all over the world, not only in India.
Amazing, sir.
So I'm the living example.
Right. So
All right.
thank you so much, sir. And I think I'll try applying this because I am a Marwari, but my
Okay.
children can't speak Marwari properly.
You should.
Yeah, because being a North
Otherwise-
Indian, I'm also North Indian. So Hindi is more prevalent in my family rather than mother tongue. So mother tongue is Marwari, but we speak Hindi. And definitely now I'm going to put in effort and teach my children to speak Marwari.
One, and two is even if your family language, will be considered the root language is Hindi, then they have to build proficiency in that language.
Sure, sir.
All right.
Yeah.
And then you will automatically see them do better in the other language, in this case, English.
Sir, it is also said, our teachers' advisors or our children's teacher that you should speak in English with your child. But what happens is when I want to communicate with my child, I want my child to be connected. I want him to express himself properly to me, and that he can do only when I speak in my root language, that is
Okay.
Hindi. But
Yeah.
by and again, even school enforces that you should speak in English with your child.
That's wrong. Whoever advised you doesn't actually know or they have read the basic theories of language acquisition. I have. All right. And I call this school a bilingual school. I do not call it an English medium school.
Great, sir.
Because- there is this very strange rule that is applied to English medium schools that in the corridor too, they have to speak in English. I don't subscribe to that. You can't make friends in a foreign language.
Right, sir. I remember even
So
my
in the
school-
corridors, there are more. Pardon?
In my school also, everywhere we had written speak in English, and you'd be fine if you are heard speaking in any other language. I remember that.
Yes, you would have done much better. You're brilliant in this language, but I'm sure you would have done better if you were allowed to sort of use it in the context of making friends. The other thing is, isn't making friends important?
It is, the prime importance thing.
Right. So because it's a communication skill, it's a life skill, whatever you may call it. Now, by forcing them to do that in another language, you are actually killing one of the most important skills that would see to it that they are doing professionally well. How about that?
Today I'm amazed actually with so many thoughts, changing my entire perception of teaching the English language, sir. And
Thank you.
I'm sure this is going to benefit so many of our viewers, sir. It will, because for us, English is a fashion. It's a fad. If my child can speak English fluently, parents look up to me like, oh, she's the mother. She might have taught him. So this is what is happening, to be very, very frank, sir. If my
Yeah,
child is
that's
not
happening.
speaking, yeah, so my child feel that he is left out in the society if she cannot communicate in English. This is happening.
She would, because that's a utility language. But how would you make her more proficient in that? By enhancing her skills in the root language. I have been teaching English where my contenders were native speakers.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
And as you see, my skin also doesn't quite gel well with the native speaker, the whitewashed person. I have everything wrong. But yet I have competed with them and I have not done too badly. I've taught in Indonesia for 5 years in international schools. I have set up what is known as a CIE, like IGCSE. I'm sure you have heard about that.
Yeah. I just
So I've set up a CIE school in Bali, Indonesia.
wow.
So I don't have any doubts about the level of my proficiency. Of course, I could be better, but even then.
So,
And
because I think
was in a Bengali medium school.
there is no end to become better and better version of ourselves, sir. And I'm truly today very, very happy to be connected to you, to such a humble person, a modest person who looks for making friends. Today children need friends. This is your attitude towards children. And this is what, and as you rightly say, remove the fear of marks and they will perform better in each and every subject.
Sure.
And
I believe in that and we practice that.
that was a wonderful session with you, sir. Thank you so much for giving us the time, sir. And we are very, very happy for this opportunity, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.